กับหัวข้อแรกการยกระดับอัตลักษณ์แฟชั่นไทยเพื่อความสามารถในการแข่งขันระดับโลกได้รับเกียรติจากทางวิทยากรต่างชาตินะคะ So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Jayne Estève Curé, Creative Fashion Luxury and Business Consultancy to speak on elevating Thai fashion identity for global competitiveness. Big round of applause, please.
Hello everybody, can you hear me well? Okay, hi everybody, bonjour, sawadika, very happy to be here. So, we are talking about fashion today and about elevating Thai fashion identity for global competitiveness through soft power. And I am Jayne Estève Curé, and I'm very, very honored and very, very happy to be here with you today. Very briefly, you can find out more about me on my website, etc. But I have been very lucky to come to Thailand several times and work with some of your designers, and I am very thrilled and honored to be here. So what's my approach here? My approach is about thinking and trying to give you some of my ideas, some of my reflections to bring something to the amazing approach that you already have for Thai fashion. So my main focus is about empowering Thai fashion identity with a strong Thai-only creative signature. And the topics that I'm going to be talking about today are several. Let me explain to you. So the first one is all about soft power in fashion. Let's just try to understand what is soft power and what does it mean when you talk about fashion. Secondly, I want to explain about my French background and culture and how France has built soft power in fashion. So I'd like to explain this to you as an example and illustration of soft power in fashion. And then I would like to then talk about the national and global approach of soft power and that Thai can also use and about the building blocks you can use on a national level. And I will finish with some ideas to elevate brands and particularly creative brands in fashion in Thailand. So the first part is about soft power in fashion. Let me tell you a little bit more about this. So first of all, what can we say about this topic? It's about understanding what soft power can be, particularly for fashion. So here are a few fundamental precepts. So soft power is initially used in a diplomatic context. It's something that's been used for countries to have a cultural and economical impact through culture, creativity, and different other scientific fields. And the idea is to increase influence. It's about increasing influence in terms of economy and culture and creativity, also very important, as opposed to hard power, which is, of course, not at all what we are talking about today. So the general definition about soft power is about persuading, it's about being convincing, and it's about influencing. So you have to be coherent, you have to be cohesive, and you have to be convincing. This is not something you can push onto people. It's something that has to happen naturally. And this is the difficulty and the beauty of soft power. And of course, fashion is very strong. It's a very strong instrument to exert soft power. So why is fashion such a good way to use soft power? First of all, because it's naturally, fashion is soft power already. Fashion is all about engaging with creativity, imagination. It's about attracting. It's about talking to a public. It's about pleasure and desirability. It's about image, self-image, and also our perception of the world. I'm a true believer that fashion is a reflection of the world we live in. It's an artistic approach. It's about talking how we feel about the world through creativity of fashion. Here you can see, of course, the examples of Gabrielle Chanel and her little black dress in the 1920s, which was a big change in the world of fashion. So fashion is a natural soft power. in two different ways. So the first one you can see here is what I call the bubble up effect. The bubble up effect is about this pyramidal structure of fashion. A lot of fashion comes from the street. A lot of fashion comes from youth. It comes from youthful power. It's about modes of expression that are in tune with l'air du temps. I will talk about l'air du temps further along. But of course, fashion and the soft power fashion also trickles down. So it trickles down from influential figures and iconic people in fashion, whether they are fashion designers, influencers, you know, different types of people, diffusers, all the different types of people who are going to have an impact on how fashion becomes a soft power trickling down. So it's really about bubbling up and trickling down. How does fashion lead to soft power? It's a lot about the fact that fashion people have an artistic ability. They want to make an impact on the world. They want to express a vision of the world. It's about sensitivity, emotion, creativity. It's not AI. It's not robotic. It's about humanness and emotional. And it's artistic. It's an artistic medium. And it's about dialoguing with the spirit of the times. In French, l'air du temps. Everything that surrounds us and that impacts us in the way we see the world. So we will talk about air du temps further. How does fashion lead to soft power? Through swaying consumption in fashion. It's about a collective taste, not something you can actually define. In the air. Why does something become so fashionable at a certain moment? It's because we want it to happen. It's something that becomes natural. So this is about creativity and about communication and the zeitgeist, as I was saying. So fashion leads to soft power in a natural way. And this comes all the way from haute couture, which is, you know, the highest level of design, where it's all made to measure, handmade, through the French system of haute couture, all the way down to, you know, everyday fashions. You know, fashion is for everyone. The whole planet wears clothing and apparel, and therefore it's a very, very strong soft power. So let's move on to the second part, where I'd like to explain about the French soft power and how it came into being. So firstly, you have to understand that soft power in fashion takes time. It's not like click and it happens. It's something that needs time. You have to think about a long-term plan. Where do we want to be in 10 years' time? Where do we want to be in 20 years' time? It's something that you build progressively. So how did Paris do it? Paris did it through several ways. So first of all, we have Louis XIV, the Sun King, Le Roi Soleil, who was definitely very instrumental for soft power through fashion and other arts. A little bit like you here with all these 11 sectors. Louis XIV was very interested in many different sectors of creativity and know-how in his time in France. And he wanted France to become the #1 country in Europe, which was actually reigned culturally through Spain. In fact, he married a Spanish princess. And Louis XIV was very important in building this soft power. Then, of course, we have haute couture, and we have other topics I will explain to you one by one. So #1, Louis XIV, like I said, the Sun King. He wanted to make an impact and influence European and world culture through the know-how and through the creativity and the craft and the artisanship of very high level for French makers. So he was definitely, it was a plan. He had a minister called Colbert, and together they devised a plan to do this. So it's about strategy. It didn't just happen. And of course, he built Versailles, and he built, and he used fashion and his own person, the way he was dressed, and his favorites, the women who were in his life, as instruments of soft power. So he definitely was very, very instrumental. And he used fashion for cultural influences. He used it also to make a symbol of authority. It had a very big impact because you could not buy something from abroad that could be made in France. So it was definitely also very important. It was a diplomatic tool. He would invite people to Paris, to Versailles, and show them everything that they were capable of doing. It was a good way to unify French identity because people were proud to belong to this overall system. And he was very important in empowering women, especially through fashion and clothing, because he made a new job called les marchands de mode. Rose Bertin was a very important marchand de mode 100 years later for Marie Antoinette. And marchands de mode were women who could open a shop and sell everything to make clothing. This was very, very new and very important. So he definitely was very important for France to do this. A second very important thing for France is an English guy. His name was Charles Frederick Worth. Charles Frederick Worth was an English young man who came to live in France, and he built the first haute couture house. He was the first person to put his name on a clothing design, the Maison Worth. And it was the big change because he decided with other fashion designers of that time to make a label, like a specific name you have to put on haute couture, and it became French. No one can do haute couture without going through the French soft power system. So this is also very interesting and very important. They built the Chambre syndicale de la couture, which today is very important to do that. So of course, since then we've had this exclusive French label. It's like champagne. I don't know if you like champagne, but champagne, you can only have it in France in the Champagne region. You can make method champagne, but it's not the same. It has to have the label. Another important thing about French soft power is France in itself and some important landmarks. So we have Paris, of course. One of the important landmarks of Paris is the Eiffel Tower. Today, the Eiffel Tower, and for many years, has played a significant role in the role of soft power and fashion. So the Eiffel Tower was actually built 132 years ago. Originally, it was supposed to be taken down after 2 years. It was built for the International Exhibition in Paris in 1889, and they decided to keep it, and it's become a very strong landmark. And since then, you find the Eiffel Tower everywhere in fashion. For example, first Dior collection in 1947, shot in front of the Eiffel Tower. If we go further, we have Audrey Hepburn in the film Some Like It Hot, When Paris Sizzles, shot in front of the Eiffel Tower. The first fashion show by Paco Rabanne in the 1960s, taken in front of the Eiffel Tower. Very important. Here we have, for example, some design by Jean-Paul Gaultier, where he uses the Eiffel Tower in his designs, and he actually made a dress that looks like the Eiffel Tower. We have publicity, for example, advertising for Dior with the Lady Dior bag taken on the Eiffel Tower. Another example is how fashion loves Paris and fashion are intertwined. It's a love story that the French talk about. We also have Chanel, who did an impressive fashion show where they reconstructed part of the Eiffel Tower inside the museum, the Grand Palais. And then we have, for example, more recently, Balenciaga and the designer Denmark Versailles, who used the Eiffel Tower like the trinkets you can buy when you're a tourist to make high fashion. We also have, of course, the fashion shows by Saint Laurent that take place at the Trocadero in front of the Eiffel Tower. So it's this soft, embedded idea of power through Paris and the French identity. And then we have Emily in Paris. You may have seen this very famous American series on Netflix with some important moments taken in front of the Eiffel Tower. So another thing also that I'd like to say is that French fashion is not just Paris. It's also now becoming the south of France. And this is an example of a change for Vogue. Before, Vogue used to be called Paris Vogue, and 4 or 5 years ago, they changed it to France Vogue. So I think you have Thailand Vogue, but it could also be Bangkok Vogue. It's this idea of how it can evolve. So I'd like to talk about the south of France, which is here, as you can see, by the Mediterranean. And it's become an important part also of soft power and fashion. Why? First of all, because it's a very beautiful way of living. It's a bit like all your beautiful beaches and wonderful places you have in Thailand. So it's very sophisticated, chic, and lots of fashion happening there. And of course, we have Monaco, Monte Carlo not far, all the 60s movies like Brigitte Bardot. You have, for example, here Louis Vuitton book about the French Riviera, telling you all about the French Riviera. So also a lot about luxury. And then we have, for example, all this way of life, which is about fashion also. And then very importantly, there's a very famous fashion competition called the Hier Festival. Probably the most, with the Andam Prize, probably one of the most important competitions which takes place in the south of France. So maybe there should be that kind of idea happening also for you. I know you already have a lot of very interesting competitions. And then, of course, we have the Cannes Festival every year, which is also about film, and where this was in 2024. We have our French singer Isolde wearing the famous bar jacket and outfit made by Dior, etc. So the film industry is also very important. I know you have a very strong film industry here because it's a place where you can show fashion. It's also about soft power. And then, of course, we have some very important designers in the south of France. One of the rising stars is Jacques Mus, Simon Jacques Mus, who's really become the big fashion designer today of the young generation. He comes from the south of France. Then we have the Parisienne, so this idea of the French woman who's very sophisticated, elegant, laid back, cultivated, intellectual. This is one of our most top influencers called Lina Malouf, Lina Situacio. She has more than 4 million followers. She was at the Met Gala. She's becoming a superstar. And she's also talking about fashion. So this is also influencing soft power. And then, of course, we have the Paris Fashion Weeks and all the events that take place during Couture Week and the Fashion Weeks, where a lot is being said about fashion. Of course, we have schools. So we have Les Arts Décoratifs, we have l'IFM, we have S-Mod and many other schools. I've been lucky to teach in most of these schools, and we're also, as you are here in Thailand, using this also. And lastly, but not leastly, Paris is the capital of luxury. We have LVMH, Kering, Chanel, and Hermès. And these are people I know you could talk to. I know that there are many things happening, particularly also with Dior, who are working with the métier d'art and with craft and doing fashion shows abroad, as they did in India not so long ago. So I have a lot to say. I'm moving fast. I hope you can follow me, but I want to say as much as I can during this half hour. Thirdly, I'd like to talk about some building blocks that you can use for soft power, for fashion, particularly some ingredients that can be used for this. So, of course, you have your macro soft power with sustaining and promoting fashion with Thailand, with the government, with THACCA, with the Soft Power Fashion Committee, and all these people that are working so hard to do something with soft power and with fashion. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here. You can see this. It's about different things you can do in terms of soft power, of course, for fashion. So we have, for example, things like promotion of designers and brands, emerging designers and partnership with established brands. I know you have many already in Thailand. Organizing international fashion events, such as what you are doing here. Education, training, it all begins with education and training. This is the beginning of everything. If you have the right education, the right training, you have the force and the creativity that's already in your people, because Thai is so creative. You are such a creative people, and you know, training and teaching is a good way to help make that into the fashion soft power. Cultural diplomacy, working with foreign countries. I know you're doing this already. Media and communication. Today, it's not possible to do anything without being on Instagram, TikTok, and all the other very important social media. Innovation, sustainability. It's a challenge. It's very difficult. Fashion is seen as, you know, the big bad wolf about sustainability. Whatever you do to show you are trying to work on sustainability, ecology, ethics, etc., will be a very strong point also. And of course, heritage, tradition, and there is so much in Thailand. So to develop and sustain Thai fashion in a more maybe personal way, here is some of the ideas I would have. First of all, you have to work on the DNA. It's very important. Ancestral and contemporary. DNA evolves. It's your heritage, but it's also something that transmutes and that becomes working with today's world. So it's about evolution, mutation. It's about creativity, know-how, using the know-how in a modern way, but also using the ancestral techniques in a modern way. Secondly, very important, tune into today's air du temps. What is important today? How do you echo with a global audience? And of course, with today, with social media, it's easy. If you talk to a 20-year-old Thai person, or you talk to a 20-year-old person from the South America, or from Europe, or from anywhere in the world, they're speaking the same language. So this is something that's also very important to be relevant in today's world. Thirdly, include fashion within the Thai scope. What do I mean by this? I mean, you have so many creative industries work together, collaborate. This is already a very interesting way of collaborating. But you can do things together, maybe work together on special projects. Fashion can work with every type of creative industry. So that's also something you can do that can be interesting. And of course, Thai branding, fashion branding. What's the brand platform for Thai fashion? What's the vision, the mission, the promise? What are the different key elements of the branding and business model you can develop in your country? Then everybody does their own thing, but within this common soft power scope. And then, of course, promoting everything through this business model. So these are a few key words that I've just pronounced that I think we have to have in mind. It's about identity. It's about creativity. Creativity is about your own special way of looking at things and things you want to say to the world. DNA that mutates, that evolves. We have the word craft, artisanship, know-how, ancestral knowledge that we have to keep and promote and develop. The sign of the times, being relevant in today's world. Having a vision, knowing where we want to go, what's the plan, where we aiming to move forwards to. Using the culture and everything that makes the Thai culture, of course, and seeing how it can be developed within global competitiveness as also. And then, of course, we have innovation, ancestral, and of course, let's not forget business. Business is crucial. If you have no business model, no business mind, no business plan, no way of financing what you are doing, it doesn't go very far. So we have to have a mixture of all these ingredients to apply this soft power. Importantly, we have two different things. When we talk about identity, we can see two different levels. Firstly, what is identical? So identity is about being identical. What is common amongst ourselves? So how do we group under the same banner of Thai fashion? Being identical to a certain degree. Secondly, you have to be singular. What is your singularity as a brand, your singularity as a creative person? So it's about doing these two things. The soft power is collective and the soft power is individual. Fourth and last part. So how can we elevate a Thai brand also? What are my ideas that I would like to share with you? So first of all, we have to think about how we want to develop this. So here are the key words. They're very similar to what I explained for the national approach. First of all, revealing, enhancing strong DNA, know-how, and creativity. Each brand has its own level of creativity, whether you're doing fast fashion or you're doing bespoke, handmade fashion. It's about the specificity of who you are and what is your DNA and how it can evolve. Secondly, having an individual vision, being relevant in this air du temps. What can you say today through your brand that is going to speak to an audience, that is going to be relevant elsewhere in the world? How is it going to communicate with the rest of the global markets? Fourthly, it's about having a good business model. What do I mean by business model? It's about where do I design? How do I design? Where do I source? Where do I get my fabrics from? Where does the weaving come from? How do I produce? How do I diffuse? How do I communicate? How do I distribute? So it's really the whole textile, clothing, and distribution system. What do I do with my products when they're finished? How do I transform them? Very important. Having a brand platform also for your brand. And collaborating in this Thai creative scope. You're so lucky to have so many sectors that are very creative. How can you use them and collaborate with them? How do you feel you want to work with food? How do you want to work with film, with art, with design, etc.? And finally, how can you build your strong creative brand identity? It's about singularity, knowing who you are, building a community, and continuing this way. So a few examples of this. First of all, enhancing your identity. So it's finding the balance between contemporary and ancestral and having your own way of looking at things, having your DNA. You can see here, for example, with the work of Pop, Maison Wonder Anatomy, and before we saw other brands, how you use your mix and your essence to develop that brand DNA. It's also about l'air du temps, this sign of the times, the moment we are living in. So here, for example, I think this is a very good example. Here with Stretsis, you can see how it's very modern, it's very young, it's youthful, but it's also very, it has a Thai creativity. I think it's a really good example of this soft power and this mix. And then, of course, we have the brand platform. So without going into all the details, but I'd just like to explain, brand platform is about your roots and your heritage. It's about your vision. What do you want to say to the world? You know, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What's your plan? The mission is also about what do you want to, how do you want to take people there? What do you want to do with them? The values you have, the promise you give, and the personality that is embedded and becomes your brand ambassador for this. So, of course, we then have collaborations. You have many different ways of collaborating and working in Thailand and across the globe. And then, of course, we have your creative identity. So it's about brand identity, DNA, brand platform, mixed marketing, thinking your strategy. So I'm sorry, I have 30 seconds left. So I hope it was very clear. I know it was a little bit fast, but I'm sure you can have the presentation to look at. And if you want to know more, don't hesitate. And really, I really believe in the soft power of fashion in Thailand. And, you know, I've been extreme. This is my soft power. It's about the heart. It's about identity. It's about creativity, poetry, technology, giving back. You know, we can't be just doing things for ourselves. We have to give back. And this is also, I think, a very strong Thai cultural, very strong point. So thank you very, very much. And I hope to see you again.
ขอบคุณค่ะ